So if it sounds to me that the ACA is also part of the problem, why is it why is it a punishment for some of these to be losing their ACA accreditation when they seem to be able to do this exact same thing either whether they're accredited or not?
Yeah, an interesting thing happening in the zoological world is that for zoos, the AZA is absolutely without a doubt, and I truly believe it's a standard of excellence as far as zoos go.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, I'd never work in a zoo again. I would never donate to a zoo. But if you're going to go to a zoo and you can't be convinced otherwise, that's the best. It's not a roadside zoo.
Right.
But some of their practices, especially with regard to the ambassador animals, are the same practices that roadside zoos conduct.
Right. Exactly.
So a zoo wants to retain that. Yeah, that zoo wants to retain that AZA accreditation because it's kind of like putting your Better Business Bureau stamp on your business.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they can claim to be part of the best organization of zoos.
Sure.
What's really interesting over the last couple of years is there's the subculture, which is the ZAA, the Zoological Association of America, which I'm familiar with, and our former CEO, president at our zoo in Tampa, was actually on the board of directors for that at the time. It's a much lower standard. It does include some roadside zoos.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something I'd encourage anybody to go to, but what's really disappointing for me is that there's probably been about a half dozen AZA accredited zoos over the course of the last 2 years that have cross-accredited with the ZAA. So think about that. That's a genius move for the ZAA to make.
Yeah.
Because now they're like looking better by association.
Right.
And it's
Absolutely.
one of the poorest decision that an AZA accredited zoo could make, because now you're associating yourself, your gold standard, with at best, coal standard.
Right. So
so it's really fascinating.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. It definitely is. And it's something for, we've talked about this in previous podcasts about, the photo op issues, how that's such a huge, big problem because it brings in a lot of money. And the problem is that, for example, in the big cats, you can only use them for 6 months or a certain amount of weight until you got to get rid of them. So, they keep getting traded. And that's why we have so many big cats here in the U.S. So if people are listening to this and hearing, well, you're saying that some of the AZA zoos are accredited, but yet they're doing the photo op, but then some of the roadside zoos as well, where do I go? How? I mean, if this organization is telling me this is great and this is, the top of the top, la creme of the creme, then what am I supposed to believe?
Sure.
I mean, I know you and we've been in this for a while, and we've opened up our eyes, and we know that, taking pictures with animals in certain places, it's actually doing more harm to them. But if you're seeing this, especially here in the U.S., where we're not addressing it, how is that person going to change their mind if they go, for example, some Thailand or any of those tiger temples or places like that, or get on top of an elephant? So how does that work? I mean, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, so great questions, and it's if we as humankind are going to evolve, it's no different than reading a food label.
Yeah,
you need to research.
Yeah.
So I even when I was working in the sanctuary world, I'd have guests on my tours. They would say, well, we have a local zoo, and I love the zoo, and I go to the zoo. I'd say any animal organization that you are going to go to, pay for and take the behind the scenes tours, because they all give them. It costs a little more, but you're going to see the other side of the sanctuary. You're going to see the other side of the zoo. You're going to see how it operates. You're going to see how the animals live 24/7. And then you will at least be able to walk away from there empowered as to whether, well, it seems like a good place. But the basic nuts and bolts are, if you're researching online, is if they buy, sell, trade, breed, or have human contact, don't go there. I mean, it's not a good place if they're buying, selling, trading, breeding, or allowing public interaction with exotic animals. They're about making a profit off the animals.
Right. But isn't that just about every single zoo? I mean, isn't there how they make their money is by trading animals?
Right. So the only way we're going to hold the AZA to a higher standard, an even higher standard, because their ambassador, AZA 2 days ago came out with a press release. I think it was Expedia or one of the one of those companies is going to stop selling tickets to any organization that allows physical interaction with a dolphin or a whale.
Good.
I mean, at least they picked a standard, right?
Right.
So the AZA came out. You have to read the press release on the website. They came out with a scathing, attacking, damning a counterbalance that totally defended their ambassador animal program, including the allowance of allowing the public to interact with dolphins and whales, and it was the animal's best interest. It was conservation. It was education.
No.
It's just nonsense. I mean, so the AZA is not going to change without pressure. So if they're gonna put up this, if they want to fight, they need to be held accountable.
Right.
So I think that they have the huge opportunity. I mean, it seems like such a small part of their business.
Yeah.
I don't think you could convince me that the ambassador animal department, and I've worked with ours at our local AZA accredited zoo,
Right.
and they go out and do the outreaches, where you hire the 2 zookeepers or a zookeeper to come out and bring a porcupine or a African serval, in the case of the big zoos, a cheetah or some other animal. I don't think you can convince me that you can be making that much money,
Right.
that you couldn't refine that to stop doing that and still succeed as a business.
Yeah.
And if you look at the sanctuaries, and here's a perfect example, if you look at the good GFAX accredited sanctuaries, they're making ends meet, and they're not taking their animals out and exposing them at outreaches at a wedding or a church gathering or a school. They're not doing it, and they're making them ends meet. So you can't tell me you have $100 million in assets and you can't do the same thing.
Right. Now, who holds them accountable? Who runs the AZA? Is this a private company? Is this run by the government?
No, it's private. It's led by Dan Ash. He's the president CEO. He used to work for the USDA. And I think Dan seemed to be he truly has seemed to be receptive to helping making when the Columbus debacle went down with Jack and everything else that was going on there, he seemed to it seemed to be part of a swift action to help see positive evolution there.
Yeah.
I haven't seen much after that, and I haven't seen any action with regard to all the other zoos that are doing exactly what Columbus was doing.
Right.
So I'll give you an example. And then, if I can research this, you can't tell me that the powers that be within the AZA don't know this.
Sure.
So the Nashville Zoo is renowned for breeding clouded leopards, and they're renowned for making ambassador animals. Breed them, purposely human imprint them, and then exploit them as ambassador animals. At weddings and parties and birthdays and everything else. So I tracked some of their ambassador clouded leopards, and they got transferred to another ZA, it wasn't AZA, but it got transferred to a ZA accredited facility in Florida. I thought, well, that's not great, but it's not the worst. And then I watched as that ZA accredited facility continued allowing full interaction with the adult clouded leopards, photo ops, everything else, and then was breeding and dumped those babies off to a completely unaccredited roadside zoo in Florida. It's called, I think, Extreme Wildlife or something. It just, so here's the case where here's the Nashville Zoo by disconnect, parting with the older ambassador, the clouded leopards they didn't want, went to a ZA, and then eventually the offspring went to a roadside zoo. So I think there's a huge problem. I think what really needs to take place is somebody needs to step up and hold the AZA accountable. And if you really wanted to track these cats, you would need to do a forensic analysis of their stud books for every species that whether it be snow leopard, clouded leopard, tiger, elephant, and track where these animals go, and then hold those people that are managing the stud books, hold them accountable for the decisions that they're making and allowing those animals to be transferred to unaccredited facilities.
Right. Yeah, it sounds to me that either we put a lot more pressure on these people about what's going on, or it sounds like we need a new organization with new rules.